Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Discard for Magic. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron.
And I'm your other host, James or Jexic, and today we're delighted to have on Donald Schultz.
Hey, everybody. I'm Donald Schultz.
And Nick Conley.
Hello again.
You may remember them from Plaid Hat and doing stuff for them. And today we're going to ask Donald first how he came to work for Plaid Hat and do the things he does.
Ooh, yeah. I go back a long ways with Plaid Hat. I used to be a content creator in another life. My friends and I made a web series called Bored with Life that was a comedy show about board games, and we also did Let's Plays. And Colby has always been a big supporter of the idea that games benefit from multimedia content. So I have done, stuff with Plaid Hat as a content creator for a very long time. And then around the time of Forgotten Waters, I was doing the audio direction for that. And Colby was so excited about it. He was like, we should do audio on lots of games, to the point of where it would make sense to have you on staff permanently. And so I did. I joined the staff, and Colby has regretted that decision every day since.
Your YouTube channel is called Bored with Life, right?
Yeah, it's long dead now. It was Moonrat Media because we had ideas of expanding it into more things. Didn't really work out.
I remember you had one on Dead of Winter is probably where I first came across it.
Yeah, we had a Let's Play of Dead of Winter that was very popular. And then later we did a episode of our second season that I wrote and directed about Dead of Winter. Yeah, I'm very proud of that one. I'm very proud of both of those things. Dead of Winter and me, we have a history.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever play, was it just the base, original first edition of Dead of Winter? I don't know, first edition's not the right word. There was the expansion, The Long Night, right?
Yeah, I think I've played Long Night. I haven't done Colony Wars, but definitely the original version of Dead of Winter is the one we played. We gave it our Game of the Year award at the time, very coveted thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that game was very important and sort of revolutionary to me about thinking about board games and role-playing games and sort of where those two things could intersect.
No, for sure. I'll be interested to hear, from fans of Dead of Winter, how many people actually played Warring Colonies consistently?
Takes a lot of people.
Yeah, it seems like such a fun idea, but I don't know. I don't know anybody that's played it.
I could not believe that came out. I remember hearing about that and being like, wait a minute, you're gonna play two games of Dead of Winter against each other? How is this even possible? And I have not experienced it myself, so who knows?
I remember when they were playing it in the office, I would come by just as a visitor, but I never participated in a game. That's one of those things that I think for me is would have been an aspirational sort of purchase. I'm excited to get it done once. That's how, Twilight Imperium and stuff are. Those games that are this is not about getting it to the table once a week. This is about maybe one day I'll get to do this. There was around the same time another game that had a similar thing. It was Cyclades and Kemet had a thing that was if you own both of those games, buy this expansion, and it crosses the streams.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting times in board games.
Yeah, I remember really, really awaiting the arrival of Dead of Winter, and before that, because this is when The Walking Dead was really big, I was just starting to get into more hobby board games. We played Catan basically every night.
Yeah.
Leading up to this. And then because I was so excited for Dead of Winter and all my friends like The Walking Dead, we got this big box game from a big store game of Dead of Winter. And it was just this very simple, Target Dead of Winter game. And we just played it into the ground because we were so excited and just wanted to get as close to playing Dead of Winter as possible. We're okay, this will be our warm-up game. And we fell in love with it. It was so simple and honestly a lot of similarities in a way. You were moving between different locations, managing the zombie population at each of them, and picking up ammo as scrounging up whatever you could with resources. And then we got Dead of Winter and we're like, dang, this is really similar in a weird way.
That's funny. I didn't know that. It's funny. I was obviously a lot cooler than Nick when we were young and kissed more people and went to different kinds of parties. It's funny because at the time, I remember when I would pitch people Dead of Winter, it was like in spite of the popularity of zombies, Walking Dead and stuff at the time. I remember being like, no, you don't understand. This is good.
You're always ahead of the time.
I guess so. I guess I'm just like always sort of ahead of the curve.
You said it was a Dead of Winter game. You mean like a Walking Dead game that you purchased?
Oh yeah, what? Yeah, I mean,
It's The
Walking
Walking
Dead. We played the Walking Dead board game.
That's what I thought, but you said something different.
Oh my gosh.
You had fun with that, and then you had more fun with Dead of Winter when it came out.
That's right.
I played it a lot too, and eventually, like, I got to the point where like we got certain strategies that seemed to work. Eventually, I kind of just thought that it came down to a coin flip, and it upset me just based on whether or not you have a trader, you know. So it's like it's not the kind of game that you can strategize about too much. I think it's best if you just bring out with new people, and they're like, "Wow, I've never seen a game like this."
Discovering it together was really where it shined.
You're like, meta does evolve to a certain point where it's like, okay, actually, it's pretty one note and how this is going to play out if you're not playing with new people. But, a lot of games, I think, work best when you're showing it to people who are like, I can't believe a board game is doing this,
Yeah, and then I can yell at James for taking all 7 of the guns that we have as a colony and then
Kick him out.
James, I don't care about your quest. I don't care about what objective you have. We need the guns to kill the zombies.
Zombies. Yeah, it was fun. I had a lot of good times with it. I think my little thing I wrote was called like 28 Plays Later.
Ooh, good title.
I'm a fan of puns.
We've been talking a lot about what made that game work and how to improve it. Game that always comes back. We miss it dearly.
It's no longer with Plaid Hat, right? It's the ones didn't get to keep.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight is now its step parent. We wish them the best. I hope that they
Not its real dad, though.
no. Well, it'd be cool if they did like a really deluxe, crazy second edition or something of it. Seems like the nostalgia's there, and there's places to improve it, but they don't talk to us. I don't know.
So, Donald, how did you get the idea for what is now called the Chosen Grove? Were you just like walking in the woods and said, "Oh man, tree faction done"?
Pretty close. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. As I remember it, sometimes Nick will come down for work stuff, and I'm kind of like closer than where Nick is. And so Nick will crash here with Nikki and I. Then Nick gets to spend some time in Oberlin, where I live. We were walking through the park in the middle of town, Tappan Square, which is full of old trees. And we were headed to a restaurant talking about how we liked trees, I think. I think I threw out this idea for a faction where the summoner was a giant tree, like the mana tree from like Secret of Mana or something. And the idea at the time was like, what if the summoner could not move and just had a ton of life and was like 4 cards big? And that's, I think, where the conversation started. Does that ring any bells to you, Nick?
Yeah, it at least sounds like something that could have happened. So let's go with it. I don't remember at all. But yeah, it was an idea that you had. Pretty conveniently, it slotted into the 2 deck building icons that was coming up in development, which is Growth and Divine. Like, oh, perfect. We can really fit this one in to playtesting pretty soon. So we kind of charged in quickly on designing this one. Like, we'll come up with faction ideas in development, just like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if a faction was like this? And it's like, yeah, the
2
deck
years from
building
now.
symbols are, yeah, we'll talk in 2027 about that one. But yeah, this one like really got us excited in the concept of the tree that was like too big for the board or like couldn't move. We were like, there's something here. And the mantra that Donald has instilled in us for development is tree big. And whenever we're deciding on what to do with the deck or what like changes to make, we got to remember, is the tree big?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it's nice when you can point to a faction and tell somebody in like one sentence what it does, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, oh, these guys are good at XYZ or whatever. And yeah, this one is tree big.
Sort of the the Hulk smash sort of mantra.
Absolutely.
But it's a tree.
And we like talk about this stuff constantly. When Nick and I get together, we just shoot ideas around. And 99% of the time, Colby has zero interest in them. So this was a really nice intersection of things where my shotgun approach of just coming up with dumb ideas and letting other people figure out the details really worked out pretty well here because even Colby liked it.
Colby has to like one of these ideas at some point. I mean, if I just
Right.
keep tossing ideas at him, he's
Mhm.
got to like one of them.
Usually it's like, what would be good for the light and dark symbol? And I go, Wolfman's. And they go like, what would that be? And I go, I don't know.
Whatever you guys can figure out.
I'm just the idea man here. You guys take the ball and run with it.
Did you come up with any other card ideas, or was it just like the tree? Tree's big.
There was card ideas. I think from there, it kind of usually goes like, you make like a little document and actually flesh it out and see if the ideas kind of register. Some early obvious ones were like, there should probably be an event that lets the tree get up and walk around. That was pretty early on. Also, at the time, and I don't think it is this way anymore, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but at the time I was thinking it was like sort of a reverse of what you often see with the divine symbol, which is like everybody is funneling all of their resources into the tree. Like all of the units are healing your summoner. But that just, I think, is actually aggravating in practice to play against a summoner that has 20 life and is just constantly healing. But I imagined it almost as like a tower defense thing originally. So a lot of the units were kind of like all about just like, because remember, in my mind, it was 4 cards big. So it was all about like, how do I block up the real estate to stop you from hitting this big tree?
Yeah, so the tree is not 4 spaces big. That's one of the details of the original pitch that we did not keep.
Right.
We even thought about doing like, oh, could we do like 2 cards and change like the starting gate to be the other half of the card? But ultimately, it felt like we could deliver on the concept without doing something so radical as that. So the tree does have 20 life, and this is all like hot off the presses. Playtesting just started
Mm-hmm.
4 days ago, maybe. So
Subject to change.
yeah, we're hitting the ground running though, and it's a really cool deck already. Yeah, we have the Summoner's got 20 life, the biggest that will ever be in the game, most likely. I'll just say yes.
Yeah, I mean, 20 life is still like 6 more than like Grognak.
Right, yeah, like you will never have to fight through as much HP as that. So
Yeah, tree big. I don't know if y'all have heard, but it's very big.
yeah, huge informative practice there. And Donald mentioned the event where it gets up and walks around, and innately it has this rooted ability where it can't move. And we're like, okay, is there any? We did some alpha testing where in the late game, you're like down to the wire and your opponent is a ranged summoner and you're not. And it just can like shoot you down over multiple turns while the tree's just like, I can't do anything.
Yeah, I want to say like you and maybe Nikki played a match where it went down to that and it was like, oh, I guess at this point I should just resign because I literally cannot do anything.
Yeah, so what we came up with as a solution is it is able to move once your draw pile is empty. So that really shifted the dynamic of the game where you're like, we just need to hold out until the end and then the tree will be ready to just destroy them because it's huge. And when you have a 4 strength, 20 life summoner charging at you, it doesn't matter how much you have left. It just survives for turn after turn after turn and can summon defenses for itself. So it's this cool kind of gameplay arc of like the more you can protect it in the early game, the more of a tyrant it'll be in the late game because there's just nothing that can threaten it for long enough.
Yeah, your deck runs out and suddenly the tree gets up and starts smacking people. It's funny too because in a reverse way, it ended up being a like defend the tree is a valid strategy, but it's way more proactive than just like keep healing the tree. Don't let people hit the tree.
Yeah, we actually took all healing out of the deck because there's a weird thing in games like this where healing is only good if you've sustained damage. So as the opponent, you kind of think like, well, I could attack other things so they can't play their healing cards. And in Summoner Wars, it's tough to hold on to cards for too long because you're like, oh, I gotta keep building magic. I gotta keep drawing for the things I need. So a lot of card designs, people will be frustrated if it's a type of card that you just have to hold on to for too long, or you just have to pitch for magic. So we were finding that those healing effects weren't creating the right kind of gameplay arc where we want the opponent to be laying siege to the tree to the best of their ability, and for the Chosen Grove player to be defending it as much as they can. And when healing was a part of that equation, the motivation for that really declined. So no healing. You got to be careful with that stuff.
I just remembered some deep lore about the creation of this faction. That maybe there's something interesting here for you guys. I remember now thinking about it. Another sort of talking point we had when first coming up with this is how cool Midi Mumway is, but how people don't tend to use him or get him out. And one of the original ideas was like, this is Midi Mumway's cousin or something.
It's like, what happens when you give a Midi Mumway a summoning stone?
Exactly. Yeah. I almost feel like one of the original ideas for the deck was, can we design a deck where with deck building you put Midi Mumway in there and he pops off? But I don't think that's I don't think that went very far as a design goal.
We could try.
We can try. It's early. We don't know. But
He just costs a lot. That's his issue.
yeah, I mean, the deck is certainly inspired by like what would a better Midi Mumway be as your summoner, because we have the big trample effect, and a change that I have lined up that isn't even in playtesting yet is so the uproot event. It's the epic event because even though your summoner is immobile until the end game, it's still good for there to be a couple moments throughout the game where you have an ability to reposition, whether you want to charge forward or retreat or just like step on something. So we have this uproot ability, and it can trample things for 3 damage right now because, tree big. And I want to bump it up to 5 damage because tree big.
And
And
is big. That's a good point.
because something that your opponent can do that is kind of annoying is drop a gate or a really healthy common in front of the tree. And I'm like, if this thing stepped on any of these things, it would be gone completely. I don't know if the art is out there in like the spoilers channel or whatnot, but the tree is big, and I really would like that trample to just like annihilate almost like anything but a champion who has just like a chance to hang on, and like they made a heroic save for themselves.
I love that. Yeah, Cave Goblin shouldn't be able to stop this thing in its tracks. It should just be like, no.
Yeah.
You're gone.
So we're working out the details of that uproot event still, but there's some cool things that we can still talk about that I don't know have been shared. So the art is already done for the deck, so we have the characters here, and we kind of have this cool concept that I'm sure Donald came up with, where it's this kind of collective of more outcast characters that chose the Chosen Grove as their faction. So you can see all sorts of different species from the world of Atharia have joined up here. So like there's the Oak Sworn Guard, who is an obsidian dwarf and has just big oak shield to defend, and he's another one of like those knight type units that it has protect and shove, which is like 2 of these abilities we've seen on these other knights before, but never in this exact combination. And it works as just a really awesome piece for the deck because it can protect the tree, of course, but it can also shove things away from it, so you can summon things in its place, or you can shove things toward the tree and just have the tree who can't move smack the crap out of it because it's got a ton of strength. So they're a really cool character.
There was these seed bearer characters that eventually turned into like sort of saplings that have grown from the tree. And I think they're kind of a bread and butter sort of common.
Yeah. There's the saplings. They have cultivate right now, which they get a boost at the end of your turn if they're adjacent to your summoner. so they can scale up their boost, and you're trying to like, okay, let's grow these little guys and then send them out when they're ready to go. But we do still have the seed bearers. That's it's a swamp orc.
Oh yeah. There's a swamp orc. Yeah. And then there's a elf riding a stag, if I remember correctly.
The OG character design for this was your idea for Adric, Donald.
Yes, Adric Brighton, which is Colleen Brighton from the Vanguard's hippie brother. They're similar, but he's like a lot more like granola, and moved out into the woods and joined the Chosen Grove instead of the Vanguards, and he has different ideas about saving the world. Trees, man. Can we talk about what he does, Nick?
Adric, sure. Well, he was pretty busted on the first patch that we put out. So the working idea is he has the guarded ability, which is you only take 1 damage the first time you're attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And he also can give guarded to adjacent commons. So similar to Colleen, who can protect things within a radius, Adric is also doing that, but it's a smaller radius with more potency to it. So it really does feel like they're related characters, the way you're playing with them and managing your position, trying to keep them safe to increase the fortification of your common arrangements. I hope that sticks around. It's really fun so far.
And there's also from the beginning been a kind of, I hope it sticks around, a sort of design theme of using the seasons as sort of inspiration for events and characters and stuff.
Yeah, we definitely are keeping that around for as long as we can. The 3 standard events, there's a spring, a summer, and an autumn event, and they all do different things with boost and whatnot. One change that you don't know anything about, Donald. I just put this through dealing with one of the champions. So Donald came up with this Knight of Seasons guy. You can explain that character more, Donald.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is like a green knight, sort of knight in shining armor, who's like just a monster wearing wood. But he evolved into, I believe, sort of like knight version of the saplings, like sort of envisioning, okay, one of these saplings, if it reaches champion tier, if it gets to level 20, what does it look like? Which is really cool. Yeah, I don't know. What's he do now?
So the new ability, because he's the Knight of Seasons, is when you summon him, you can grab a spring, summer, and autumn event from your discard pile back to your hand. So you just get to do like the whole thing again. So he started off as just like a boost guy, but
yeah, he was just like momentum. He can fight.
Yeah, just like a pretty basic growth character, but I was like, let's go all out with this thing. And everyone really likes the events so far. They feel fun, and you play them kind of in sequence. So it's like spring adds some boost to the table, summer gives you strength for that boost, and then autumn is still kind of up in the air right now, but maybe like spend the boost or whatever. So they kind of like follow a flow, and when he comes out and you can do all 3 of them in sequence, it's like, oh, it's so fun.
That's awesome.
He really feels like that champion status now, doing something we've never done before. And Colby has said before that the champion design space is like where we can really go off the walls and try new things because it's so limited. I'm happy with that design so far. We'll see if it sticks around. Sorry if it doesn't.
Speaking of, I like in the Savannah Elves, a thing that aside from Midi Mumbwe, I like when factions have animals in their faction, and this was a good opportunity to slide an animal in there. Do we still have a bear?
We got the bears, so we want to represent all the seasons. Unfortunately, Uproot is taking one of the event slots. Well, not unfortunately, that card's awesome. But we didn't make a winter season event, and instead, Donald came up with the idea to do like a hibernating bear champion as the expression of winter in that deck. It's cool.
And I'm curious where he lands. Last time I saw him, he went back into your deck when you hibernated him. You could bounce him if he's about to die and put him back in the deck, which affects your deck running out of cards in a very small way. I'm not sure if he's still in that zone.
Yeah, that's the rough idea still.
But I like bears. I think they're cool. And, we'll live in a world where we can watch a giant tree and a giant bear fight a giant tree and a giant lion, and that's good in my opinion. That's what
The polar dwarves famously have the bear cavalry that in the app it just shows the bear's face.
Oh yeah.
the stats for the bear originally were based from the bear cavalry. So I'm curious to see, the math probably won't shake out since he's a champion now.
Bear big.
Bear big,
Bear tired, go to sleep.
bear sleepy.
Well, I also heard a couple cool ideas for a couple different things in there. One, I think, Donald, you should be writing the children's book if you give Mitty Mumway a summoning stone, just like if you give a mouse a cookie.
Yeah. The next thing he'll want to take over Itharia.
I feel like the summoning stone would want him to bring all of his friends, It's like, if you give a mouse a summoning stone, he's going to bring a friend.
He's going to want to make a gate. And once he makes a gate, he's going to want a rhino.
And when he's got a rhino, he's going to want a bear that likes to sleep.
Mm-hmm. And then he's going to want to build magic.
And then, are you guys just going to, include a Sharpie or a whiteboard marker so we can draw the, path for the tower defense mode? Or how's that going to work?
Yeah, I think, anybody who wants to buy an extra mat from our online store, it is officially supported that you can draw on it. That's an official ruling from me. You can buy a second one and draw on it. So if that's something you want to do, that's within the rules of the game that you can draw on it.
You are allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then you can even make your own rules. I'll even let you do that.
I'm just laughing because I wonder if this could be like the tower defense wave, because what the little we've heard about Olden is also kind of that idea.
Oh yeah, so Olden will be right after the Chosen Grove. The Guild Dwarves are in alpha testing right now as well. And of course, that was the original tower defense deck. Rather, the second summoner was, but you're building all of these immobile structures and shooting things from there. But we've really kind of incorporated that structure building kind of dynamic just in most of the logic decks. Yeah, Olden's really, he's like, oh, I'll build this over here. Oh, that's not working. We'll tear it down. We'll build it over here. So he's moving around the buildings a lot, which is also kind of the light side of his design, where we've seen light decks will bounce cards back to your hand and have interplay abilities like that. So that's kind of where they are right now. They were definitely had some rough spots last time I played them in the office, but we'll get there. We always do.
It's another place where second edition is sort of more about being proactive than first edition.
And the Guild Dwarfs will likely pair with a deck that you've been working on, Nick, right? I think Colby said they're currently Vekids.
Oh yes, we have Water Spirit lined up for this wave, and yeah, we decided on the Isle Vekids is their tentative name right now. They are very in alpha right now, but I'm happy to talk more about them.
Well, first, why don't you just explain, for anybody who doesn't know, what's a Vekid? They were sort of in first edition, but even that was kind of not a ton.
Yeah, so there was a mercenary in first edition, and it is like a lizard or amphibian humanoid creature. So that mercenary was Keksu and could spend magic to heal itself. I don't know when we decided on trying Vekids, and it still could change at least until art is done on them. So I haven't seen any art for them, so this is still tentative.
I hope not. I love lizard folk as as a archetype of fantasy sort of critter.
Yeah, and I don't expect it to change because it does feel like a good fit for the theme of the deck, and it's a fantasy species we already have established in Itharia, but haven't fleshed out in second edition yet. So it really just seems like the right time to do it.
Do you have an idea for the direction of the mechanics or the theme of the deck yet in terms of what the summoner might do?
Yeah,
Lizard small.
Lizard go in and out of water.
You can have that. I'm just the idea man. You can figure out the rest from there. But lizard small would be mine.
So with water, we like to do superhero summoners. They are very strong and can like gain extra powers in the attack phase. So they beat the crap out of things. And Spirit often deals with synergizing your units together and like being greater than the sum of their parts or sharing abilities. So the idea I had for this deck was the commons can share their abilities with their summoner. So anything that's adjacent to the summoner, he has their abilities too. So you're trying to get as many different things piled up onto your summoner to make him really strong.
So it's like a Voltron summoner.
Yeah, yeah. And we've done ability copying before with like Vlox, but this kind of has a different dynamic to it where you have to kind of build more of the formation for it to get the benefits, and it can change within the turn. So you might start adjacent to somebody that lets you move faster, and then he moves over to somebody who gives him extra range or extra damage. So you're kind of like always like drawing on the power of those near you.
It might be worded kind of like Circuit or something, where it's like this unit has the abilities of the commons next to it.
Yep, that's the plan so far, and I haven't even played them yet, so who knows where they're at. They seem pretty fun and rather simple. The abilities that you can gain in the deck are I started with a lot of fundamental things like far shot or tough or strong, or just like those kind of things, just to see where that gets us.
It's always good when you can find ways to use those like abilities that are shorthand to an established player, but make teaching the game easy. It's always nice when you can build a faction that uses those. So that'd be cool if that works out.
We'll have to wait and see. So those may or may not be with the Guild Dwarves. I think they're the closest to being alpha tested further alongside the Guild Dwarves. We have two other factions left in the wave that I don't know if they've been talked about yet. I haven't played them yet, so it's just like loose thematic ideas for what to do with the remaining symbol pairings. So shaping up to be a pretty cool wave. I like these decks a lot. We finished the Filth playtesting, which will be the first to launch, and that'll be alongside the Chosen Grove, and they came out just fantastic. They're already like in my top 3 just from the playtest cycle of them, so they feel great.
Yeah, I played a little bit of the Filth, and I think they're going to be one of my go-tos. They're going to make the rotation for me. I really enjoyed them. Nikki couldn't stand playing them, so I think it's going to depend on your play style. But for me, they were off the chain. I really liked them.
What are your favorite decks now, Donald? I know you do play a bit. We saw you on stream a while back and stuff.
Yeah, I love Avians. Love playing as the Skyspear Avians. I really like playing Polar Dwarves these days. I've gotten into them recently. I used to play a lot of Savannah Elves. I've been trying to get better with the Deepwood Groaks. I'm not good with them. I'm very bad with them, but I do enjoy them because I just like Groaks. Groaks are a thing I sort of willed into Itharia. I want to support them however I can. But mainly the Avians are my bread and butter. I often forget I'm playing Summoner Wars online. If you matched up against me, I apologize if I time out. I frequently lose by Monday if I have a game that's still going when Friday hits. So because of that, I think is part of the reason I really like the way that Skyspear Avians allow me to go for like one big hit, risk it all, and I either kill their summoner or I don't. And I like that style of play. I like that I can wrap it up quick.
They're definitely pretty flexible in what you can do with them, and just dive bombing the enemy summoner is certainly something you can do.
Yeah. If you play all their events at once, basically, I move all my dudes up here. I fly past your defenses. I shoot with everything through each other. I give them all strength, and then I just hope for the best. I'm not particularly good at Summoner Wars. I'm getting better slowly. So some of the more sort of thinky factions I struggle with. I'm hoping that the Tree Big faction I'll be able to hold that in my head, hopefully, and maybe they'll make the thing. But the Filth were thinky in a way I could handle. It was like a fun little puzzle, but without the sort of mathy-ness of it. It wasn't. I'm like not smart enough to play Fungal Dwarves, but the Filth I dug.
What about you, Nick? What factions have been your favorite recently?
I do keep a going list of mine where I write about each faction and rank them. There hasn't been too much change in that recently, but the faction I've been focusing on is Crimson Order. I like to pick a faction for the season and pretty much exclusively play them and try and gobble up those gold badges from our loyal customers so I get to have the fun and one less person gets to have the fun.
Well, you've got me out there giving out free wins, and then you're you're the other way on the scale.
There you go. I've been pushing Crimson Order this season. I think I'm currently number 3. Come at me. Please don't. I want the badge.
If you're number 3, you're pretty safe, I would say.
I think so. You know, I thought I was safe a while ago, and then it kicked me down to the top 6%. And I was like, oh man, I got to start some more games. We're hanging in there. And I'm not sure how much longer we have in this season. It's probably over by the time you hear this. Yeah, so Crimson Order has been great, but I don't think anything will ever top Sand Goblins for me. That is just peak Summoner Wars, and I can't get enough of them. And every time I queue them up for a playtesting game or whatnot, I just fall in love with them again. So they're fantastic.
They're a great mix of just like the mechanics and the art just all coming together to make this really fun deck.
Yeah, it's just so fun.
But it's one that just doesn't make sense at first. Like, I don't think I'd hand that to a player for their first game of Summoner Wars.
Yeah, there's weird things you got to think about, but I'm super impressed with how you can do these just different kind of micro strategies where it's like, okay, how am I gonna set up the biter to rig it up and send it in and detonate it to do it again? Like the economy that you have to play in that game is very combo oriented with like managing detonate to get all these cards back. Cause like on paper, they have terrible stats, bad economy. It's like, it's hard to understand how they get anything done with like a 3/10 summoner with a decent ability, and blows my mind. It's so cool.
They're scrappy.
I don't remember the last time I've played Crimson Order. They're my best faction, which isn't saying much. It says I'm in the top 48%. So if you're looking to online, get your name on the big board. It feels like that's a pretty underrepresented faction right now.
Crimson Order was super popular when they came out. Yeah, people were really trying to get to the bottom of like where their power level is, and they're pretty high up there. It appears the Groks have really taken over that conversation from what was too strong. Like we all thought Crimson Order might be too strong.
The Groks have taken over all conversations. If you're in the Discord, it's like half the
And that's how it should be.
or 3/4 of the messages is just Groks.
It's so funny. It's not even about Groks most of the time, but that's just where people are talking as the general chat right now.
Yeah, they're talking Vanguards in the Grok chat. They're talking all sorts of different things down there.
It all comes back to Groks, apparently.
Speaking of Groks, Donald, you might, in some point, I don't know when this is supposed to be, but you have a Grok faction that you might do at some point?
Yeah, we did a episode of the podcast where we, Joe, Nikki, and I each pitched a Summoner Wars faction, and then we let the fans vote on what the best idea was. And I, of course, won. There was no contest. It was I called them the sewer Groks. I have no idea what they will be when Colby's done messing with them, but he insists that they are in the future. But they had a lot of movement tricks and stuff that derives from like them getting nice and mucusy whenever they get attacked by other units. And they had a pet bug because everything needs to just have an animal. They had a big old pill bug that I really liked, and I still believe in them. I still love them. Supposedly they're still coming, but it's one of those factions, like Nick said, that according to the sort of chart that we have mapped out, they're very far away still.
I mean, that's the thing that's kind of wild to me now is like we're talking about Chosen Grove and Filth. That's like faction 25 and 26, so we're not even halfway done with mapping out the 66.
Yeah, I think, we'll see what the future holds. I feel like it could use a fresh on-ramp for new players because there's so much content if you were to get into the game now.
Yeah.
What's funny is I think, honestly, would expect the content to get worse, but I think generally the content has gotten better. Obviously, I'm biased. in that regard, it's cool seeing it evolve as they refine and figure out how to make good decks for this game. It's fun getting to try the new ones and go like, oh, this is so clever. I mean, like the Storm Goblins, for example, are just so
Y'all ain't ready for Storm Goblins.
oh man, so fun and wacky and like Summoner Warsy. But that's a thing that probably would not have came to anybody's mind in the master set.
The summoner ideas are getting fresher. Things like Storm Goblins and Chosen Grove and bringing back the filth and stuff. But I also think that and this is maybe one of the things that people might be worried is adding to power creep, is just that champions are getting more usable and better overall. If you have a deck where there's just fewer dead cards, it's just by nature kind of going to make some of the things a little higher in power, but just slightly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's one of the concerns people have, but you guys have shown that you're willing to go back and fix certain things, so I think it's, it's all looking pretty good, I think.
Definitely like some events and champions from the master set era have fallen short as time has gone on. But I think one thing that's nice is it seems to be a little bit counterbalanced by the master set summoners and commons being like a really good lineup. So even with like that internal balance being a little skewed towards like modern design, they still are able to kind of stay within an appropriate power level range. But yeah, we definitely want to like refine that process. And like a lot of the playtesting feedback we get is like, oh man, like I just build this card for Magic, build this card for Magic. I don't like this champion. I never see him. I never summon it. We do want like every card to feel usable, at least in the right circumstances, and minimize the chances that a card is like mostly built for Magic because it's just less fun.
What is nice too is, y'all are on a much higher level of play than me and many people, but I think you can still grab the Phoenix Elves and go out there and win against luckily the sense of the distance between like the strongest faction in Summoner Wars and some of the weakest factions in Summoner Wars, I think, is more felt the more into the game you get. Hoping that there's not something where if you both are new to the game, you're not like picking up a deck and it just feels impossible.
Yeah.
From your end of things until you sort of get better at it and go like, ooh, you have like a distinct advantage here. But I think, I don't know. Do we have anybody who's like, oh, they're at like 80% win rate or something? You know what I mean? Like the meta is dominated by these guys.
Yeah, definitely nothing that high. The Deepwood Groaks do seem to be a bit above the rest right now.
Ooh.
You have data on that from Joe, or just it's in
I
general
asked
right
him
now?
to process it, and it hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
Joe is getting beat down right now from 100 different directions.
Yeah, I feel like half my job is like, Joe, can you do this for me, Joe?
we want tournaments now too, because like they're showing up later than the last times, because everyone's like, "Where's another tournament?"
Yeah. We're still working on cloning him.
Joe is trying to build some tools to make the Wandering Galaxy writing and audio recording go much smoother than past games, and that's like easy to sort of forget when he's also essentially running a whole video game over on the side.
Yeah, Joe's always got his work cut out for him. He's always got tons of hats he's wearing at Plaid Hat, but
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep, he should just wear the plaid one, but he chooses to wear tons. It's weird.
He's wearing like a sombrero and he's wearing
fedora. He's got a pork pie.
I saw him put on a fez at one point. It was weird.
Yeah, I didn't like that. It was because he was like doing a Doctor Who. It was really embarrassing. He's just trying to find himself. He wants to know what his right hat is for his head shape, and
Everyone
I get that.
deserves to know the answer to that question.
That's right. Everybody deserves a chance to know what type of hat looks best on their head.
I feel like I've really just been overlooking my own ability to try different hats on. I don't experiment in that.
I can tell from the sound of your voice, bucket hat. Just a nice bucket hat, like you put on a baby to keep the sunburn off of it. Just a nice bucket hat. Like the guy who sang that "Get What You Give" song in the 2000s. Remember that guy with the bucket hat? No? All right. Well, the New Radicals. You guys remember that?
You said that because this was like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't that long ago. Okay, I'm getting old. All right.
I think it was 20, but
I'll look it up.
This is a good use of this podcast. I'm glad to ruin someone else's podcast for a change.
While he's looking into that, do you guys want to talk about the new Kickstarter that's coming out this summer, Wandering Galaxies?
Woohoo!
Oh yeah. So we're making the big jump over to Kickstarter.
I want to make a correction right now. I think it's Wandering Galaxy, singular.
Just one galaxy?
The Wandering Galaxy.
Yeah, and I
Man.
don't like you ruining our SEO. That's gonna toast us now. We have to start over.
We were all wrong. It wasn't even this millennium. It was 1998.
Woo!
I think I just
Man,
first heard it like 15 years later.
Man, that's like shortly after I was born.
yeah, Wandering Galaxy. We got to play that like just the other day, a bunch.
Yeah. Designer Jerry Hawthorne was flown in to the Ohio office for a week where we jammed a bunch of Wandering Galaxy playtesting, and it was a great time.
Yeah, it was great. I love that moment because when you play a prototype, the first like 20 times we played Freelancers, it just sucked and it just feels bad. And your playtesting sucks. You're just telling people why their ideas aren't working. And it feels bad, but I love that moment when you play a game and for the first time you go, "Yeah, man, I don't know, I just had fun," and that's where we are with that game.
Yeah, that was pretty much all the feedback I had for Jerry. I was like, "Yeah, that was nice."
Yeah, there's like a little, refining certain entries or something within that app or something like that, but it's in a really good spot, and it's really different from Forgotten Waters and Freelancers in ways that I think are exciting and like distinct. It's a game. I don't know if we can say that. It's a lot gamier.
Are you sure it's not an activity?
Yeah, Freelancers is much more about laughing and sort of like exploring and telling a story, and Wandering Galaxy is like a game. Like it has interesting mechanics. You are the crew of a spaceship and you've got to make sure that spaceship don't crash. It's a lot more involved. I think people are really going to dig it.
So it's like Among Us. You're just trying to.
Yeah, it's Among Us, the board game. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the license, but we did get the art, which is weird.
Actually, every space travel in Wandering Galaxy, you just have to pull out Galaxy Trucker, and if you don't survive in Galaxy Trucker, then you crash in
Play a
Wandering
sub
Galaxy.
board game to proceed.
It does take 20 hours, but I think people will dig it. No, I don't know how much about it we can say, but it's short. You can play it in short bursts. It's got a lot of cool connective tissue. It's got a lot of fun mechanics, like more than any of the other recent Crossroad games we've done. I enjoyed sort of strategizing and thinking about, what we should do as a team with our turns and stuff.
Yeah, it's nice to have this kind of backbone structure of how we can do like action systems and progressing the narrative in our like Crossroads game series of like this style game. Seeing the different mechanical systems and situations that you get put in is so much more than just like a thematic change. It's really a different game. It's super cool. And one of my favorite things is how everybody is managing a different part of the ship. And you really need this like just across the table communication to be like, how much of this do we have? Can you get one of those for so and so? You're like really juggling around all these resources.
I need you to route power so that I can put shields up, and stuff like that, which is very cool.
It's kind of like comedically obscured, so you're really feeling like you're in the cockpit with everybody and like, okay, so who needs this? Okay, do you have one of those? Okay, yeah, it's funny.
Kind of sounds like a mix of like Captain Sonar and that computer game FTL.
Yeah. Which I think that's just so core to the spaceship theme where you're just like, okay, this is bigger than us, but we can figure it out together, and it's cool.
And Captain Sonar is a fantastic game, so if it's anything like that experience, I'm sure it'll be fantastic. For anybody who hasn't listened to one of the most recent Plaid Hat podcasts, they talked about Wandering Galaxy quite a bit. Are you guys able to share about sidekicks or anything? I know they mentioned that on that podcast. Did you guys have like a favorite one that you
had a baby with Colby, right?
Yeah, so when we made our characters, Colby's character I don't remember what their last name was. It was like Greenwood or something. So I immediately hyphenated my character's name and put his name on the end of mine and said, like, we're married. And then immediately his character had an alien put in his belly that popped out. It was a very powerful sort of alien baby that came out of his body. And eventually it was fired. We had to fire a crew member, and the crew fired our baby and shot it into space. And it was very sad. But that baby was very memorable. It's definitely, don't know what's out there. It's a deck builder. I think we can say that. And you're sort of leveling up your character, not by adding numbers to a die roll, but by improving a deck. And then you have sidekicks and equipment and stuff. And those things, you don't have to shuffle them back into your deck. You can sort of keep them with you, sort of equip them. We had several sort of sidekicks and stuff coming along on our journey, but definitely that baby was the one that really had the most sort of emergent narrative attached to it. We really fell in love with talking about that baby. Even after it was long gone, it got brought up a lot.
Even after you fired your own offspring.
I didn't. I was not even. I was getting coffee. I was not in the room. when they voted, my baby was.
They're like, Donald's too attached. We got to do this while he's out of the room. Fire the baby. It's a problem.
Yeah. But it's cool, man. We got into some weird scenarios. There's still a lot of writing being done. There's definitely enough writing completed to where I played 3 scenarios. Nick, did you play again without me?
I played twice, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because Nick wasn't in our first game. So, we played 4 scenarios. So there's a lot of writing there. But then you imagine all the different ways it could go once there's like more options, once Bistro has done his magic. We had a really fun brainstorming session where I just gave them a bunch of ideas that they wrote down. And then, I'm not going to write them. Those are just free. They can have those.
You're like space big.
Space big.
Never thought about
Crew
it like
small.
that.
But yeah, definitely a lot of like, what if you went to an asteroid belt, but all the asteroids were made out of meat? Whoa. Yeah, there's one. That's another thing too about the game is the setting of a weird galaxy really gives you a lot of license to sort of cruise through some pretty wacky scenarios without feeling like you're upsetting the sort of core assumptions of the universe. Like Freelancers is pretty wacky, but Wandering Galaxy, I mean, there's almost no rules because you're on like different planets and different stars and stuff. I mean, there could be anything out there in that big old crazy galaxy.
Which goes back to my earlier point. Space big.
Space big.
So this will be the first game on Kickstarter for Plaid Hat. A new frontier in its own way.
Oh yeah.
Will you guys think that if it's successful, there'll be more games that Plaid Hat does on Kickstarter? Or
Yeah, I think that's part of the long-term plan. We'll see how this goes. It's anytime you make a change in the direction you go on the business side of things, it's always a little bit of an experiment. So we're open to seeing how it goes.
For the longest time, Plaid Hat was kind of the holdout of not using crowdfunding, but more and more as time passes, it seems like that's where the audience just at this point is and where they sort of expect to find games. You wonder at a certain point if you're sort of doing disservice to the game, not getting it in front of people. We have people, every Gen Con or whatever come up to us with each new release and go, whoa, I didn't see the Kickstarter for this. What is this? And after a while you're like, maybe we should try it. And so, there's no way to know until you try. Hopefully it does great. And if it does great, it might make sense to do more. If it totally bombs, it might not make sense to do more. So we'll see.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best and just want to put more great games out there for as many people to see it.
are you guys aware if it'll be like some board game companies, when they do a Kickstarter, they offer other games as like add-ons if you want? Is that something that Plaid Hat's going to do? Or
I think we've talked about doing a Crossroads bundle with Forgotten Waters and or Freelancers alongside it. It's just a good time to show everybody like, oh, you're interested in this one, well, check out these other ones too. I certainly don't know all the details of like what our tiers will be and stuff like that for the Kickstarter page itself. But yeah, we've definitely talked about a Crossroads bundle like that.
$5 add-on is a Summoner Wars starter set. Just get them hooked.
Yay!
I think we are gonna try to do more mercenaries that are sort of inspired by releases. I think there will be a Wandering Galaxy inspired mercenary for Summoner Wars.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's out there.
People can see it.
I don't know if you can play her yet, but the art maybe has been seen, or maybe I'm just thinking with the play testers. We play tested that character, Tress.
Has my son Veldamax broken the meta yet?
He is getting played. People use him.
Cool.
I've not personally been impressed with Veldamax yet, but because he's just kind of a dubious wizard. He's out there.
Yeah, well, just like he is in Freelancers, he's a sort of a unreliable character.
I love the character of Veldamax. I played through the first scenario of Freelancers with my friends because they had expressed interest in the game when I described what it was about. And man, just playing that game in its finished state with all the audio and everything, it was just so funny, man. Like I can't get enough of that Veldamax guy. He's so funny.
I wish I could enjoy it in that way. That's the biggest bummer for me. My daughter weirdly loves playing Freelancers, and she's always wanting to play it, and I never want to play it ever again. And so she's like, "Can we play Freelancers tonight?" I was like, "Honey, I've played Freelancers enough."
Wasn't there like an artist once who said that like my biggest regret is I never got to watch myself live?
Yeah, that's how I feel. My biggest regret in life is I didn't get to experience my own genius from another person's perspective. I believe that was the guy from the Free Radicals, the new radical. What are they called? It was him who said that.
Bucket Hat Man.
Legend.
Bucket Hat Man said that. Yeah, about get what you give.
What's the plan then for potentially current games that are like continue to be released, like Summoner Wars or Ashes? Do you think there's like a chance that they'll move to Kickstarter, or what do you guys think about that?
We don't know.
Those games are interesting because we have the subscription model that sort of allowed those games to exist in the first place. So those might be harder to do, but yeah, we genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
If we make a good $1 jillion on Kickstarter, I think we'll probably start selling, just chairs or whatever we can on there. I can't speak for the company, but I would assume I'm on the same page as everybody, which is just generally like, the subscribers that allow Ashes and Summoner Wars to have sort of rise from their graves and exist again and probably be the first priority, making sure those people don't get mad at us.
Joe's chair will be on the next Kickstarter as an add-on for the first person who can get it,
And some of those dang hats.
That's true. Plaid hats would be a fun add-on for a Kickstarter.
Plaid sombreros, plaid bucket hats.
Oh man, we gave out plaid hats at Gen Con, and man, people gobble up free hats. I'll tell you what. Those went so fast.
People at these cons are freaks. They show up, literally, they walk by and go, "You got any free stuff?"
Actually, we have a hat. Take a hat.
Yeah. Well, it's like not even that. It's like, I have a card for a game that you definitely don't play. Like what? Like, I don't know. I used to imagine the junk drawers in their house just being insane. Where it's just like, why?
I think some people are just trying to like recoup the cost on their badges, so they're like getting exclusives. Like, oh, I bet this will go for $10. I'll go get one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's one of my pet theories, but I haven't been at Gen Con in a while, and I haven't had to work the booth, so I don't know the motivations of people. But I'm guessing.
You should come to Gen Con and work our booth. I think you'd like it.
My normal job makes it hard for me to schedule those kind of things, and I've got
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Who needs a normal job? Just work the booth for Plaid Hat.
Yeah, it pays just the
You'd
same.
be a good ambassador for Summoner Wars.
Do you have Summoner Wars at all the conventions? Because I know, like, Freelancers obviously was one of the last big releases, and in all your guys' photos and stuff, you see, like, the giant towers that Kobe builds of, like, Freelancers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But did you guys also bring, like, Summoner Wars and Ashes to a lot of those cons?
Yeah, we usually have a table for each of those, and we've had tables for other games too, like Hickory Dickory and Quirky Circuits. It really just depends on the booth size and like how new a certain release is.
You can always fall back on Summoner Wars and Ashes because there's always new releases there, depending on the cycle. What's nice is Summoner Wars demos really well. It's very easy to sit somebody down and explain it, and then it's just like, it does what the cards do. Let me know if you have any questions.
Especially if you can get two people together.
And Nick's Red Rains has, I think, made Ashes also much easier to demo as well. Is that true, Nick?
Yeah, it certainly catches people's attention a bit more if I'm like, well, do you want to play together or against each other? And then like they'll usually go, ooh, one way or the other, like based on just what their interests are. So that feels good that it has kind of broadened the appeal of the game, depending on what that particular pair of people are interested in doing.
When do you think we'll see Chosen Grove and Filth out in the wild? Like, are you guys aiming for like a Gen Con release for that, or is it just kind of up in the air still?
It could be right around that time. Always hard to say. Shipping is quite a big variable.
Yeah.
Always has been. So if it's around in time, that would be great. If it's not, see you next time.
Donald will go get it himself.
Yeah, man.
Storm Goblins and Shimmer Sea Fae are right around the corner, maybe out by the time you hear this. We just try and maintain that quarterly cadence as best as we can and see what happens.
Quite frequently, the hang up ends up being shipping woes. It's, I think, getting more stable, though. But there was a time there where predicting shipping was almost impossible.
There's so many different things that happen. It's like, oh, they decided to inspect this boat for this thing, and it's just chilling for a week. You're like, oh, man, that's a bummer. Or like, the train broke down, and they're going to fix it one day. Oh, okay. And it's just such a massive web of logistics that we don't have any control over. So, yeah, that's why release dates are always so
flexible.
You just got to be generous with it and expect a couple problems along the way, no matter what.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Go for it.
As influencers in the Summoner War space,
influencers,
what would you like to see in the future Summoner Wars? I have no power, but maybe I can transmit your ideas to Colby and say they're mine. Is there something that you're like, you know what this game needs? Blank.
James, you were talking about a Dugala faction the other day.
I think a rat faction would be cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also think
you're talking to two rat enjoyers.
I have another pitch for, like, I've had an idea. My idea would be like a primal growth deck that would be the timber orcs. They're just a bunch of burly, like, lumberjack orcs.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh.
And one of them would have a chainsaw ability, like Brub's ability, but it has to be melee.
Oh, cool.
Ah, that's fun.
That would be cool.
It's Brub's brother Grub.
He would roll two dice, so he'd need to hit swords on both to keep going.
Okay.
Be roughly the same average of like a 60% chance of hitting, but he'd be melee, so you'd have to, it's like you just don't want to get close to that guy.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, I feel like this is just like, there's been a call out to James's deck building that he has to have something with Ub in it, and he's missing a third champion. He has Blub and Brub right now, but he's missing that third one, so he needs Grub.
2028.
Or maybe just Bub.
Bub.
Yeah, he's got Wolverine haircut.
Yeah, and a chainsaw.
Smoking a cigar.
I do like the idea of all these just like hot, burly lumberjack orcs being a faction.
Yeah. Just they've all got like flannel shirts that are unbuttoned.
Yeah, that's my pitch. All right, what do you got, Aaron?
I don't know. I feel like there could be something with. Well, I guess Cloak already sort of does that. I don't know. I'm not the idea guy like Donald.
I mean, you don't have to. Even just like we need more cards that are like this or something. I was just curious.
Oh, maybe more undead stuff for your Fallen Kingdom guys.
That would be interesting.
Ooh,
I always love when we like bring back. I mean, I say we, like I'm not a part of this as much. When you guys bring back different keywords and make them mean more.
I like that too. Yeah, like when you have a word with that a card with that keyword elsewhere in the game. Yeah.
like Ember and
Gets the
Citadel kind of
gears
stuff.
turning.
Maybe a faction idea I just came up with is I don't know if there's space for another like Tundra based faction, but potentially like a dog sledding faction. I think could be a great
Ooh.
idea.
Oh yeah,
That could be cool.
man, that could have been Water Spirit.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
You have a summoner with Cling, and then a bunch doggies that drag them around the board.
All the dogs have different abilities, and
Yeah.
Dang, it was right there.
It was all there.
There's still time.
switch it. Get rid of the vet kids.
No, I think the vet kids sound cool, but I also like the idea of dogs. There's no dog faction yet.
You can always lobby Colby. Nikki had a faction that was a bunch of dogs with a rooster for a summoner.
A rooster.
It was cowboy dogs. And, no, it was cowboy chickens. But then they had a dog as a sheriff that was their summoner. Is that right, Nikki? Chicken sheriff. Dogs were the units. Okay. Believe it or not, that did not beat the sewer grokes.
So that was the pitch deck on that podcast that Nikki made.
Yes, yeah. And Joe's was hair metal dwarves with like big crazy beards that set up speakers, which is an idea I still think about a lot, and I think there's something there.
Well, we've appreciated having you guys on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks so much, guys. Really thankful for the energy you put into the game and recording these and playing games and all that stuff. It's great to have.
Yeah, this is awesome.
If there's anywhere that people want to like find you or hear more of your ideas, Donald or Nick, well, where would that be?
I am on Discord pretty much exclusively. I'm Marimbist11. You can find me in the Summoner Wars Discord. If you would like to play test for Summoner Wars or Ashes, you can send me a message and I can get you signed up for that. We're almost always looking for more playtesters, and the more data, the better the faction.
I am no longer on social media, but I am on. You can find me on Discord, the Summoner Wars Discord. I'll occasionally make a comment. And if you want to talk to me, you can message me there or on BGG. I'm a very friendly guy, but you won't find any of my ideas without just directly speaking to me.
And if you guys have more ideas, pitch them to Donald so he can pitch them to Colby, and so they can eventually potentially become a faction.
They now have access to the idea guy pipeline.
Yes, yeah. I will say I won't give you any credit. That's just know ahead of time. They'll be my ideas when Colby hears about them.
It's just part of the process. You got to respect it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't believe who sent me that Chosen Grove idea.
Everybody's had an idea stolen by Donald at one point. It's a process. It's something you always go through.
It's an honor, really.
That's true. Yeah. That get what you give guy, he stole that idea from me. So I'm just paying it forward all this time later.
This has been Discard for Magic, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Bye.
So long.